themselves in hushed tones, trying to confirm if it was really him. Elon Musk, in his usual casual attire, strolled in with a calm demeanor. He seemed unbothered by the curious stares, his sharp eyes scanning the menu above the counter before meeting Jada's astonished gaze. Jada quickly composed herself, though her hands trembled slightly as she approached the counter. "Good evening, sir. What can I get for you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the flurry of emotions within her. Elon smiled warmly, his presence oddly disarming. "I'll take a coffee, Black," he said simply, his tone as casual as any other customer. Yet, there was an unmistakable air of authority about him that made everyone in the room stay silent, watching the scene unfold. As Jada prepared his order, she couldn't help but steal glances at him. What was he doing here, in this quiet, out-of-the-way cafe? Surely, someone as important and busy as Elon Musk wouldn't just wander into a place like this without a reason. "Here's your coffee," Jada said, setting the steaming cup on the counter. Elon nodded in thanks and took a seat by the window, his expression thoughtful as he gazed outside at the dimly lit street. The regulars, too polite to approach him but too curious to look away, continued to steal glances while murmuring among themselves. Minutes passed, and Jada found herself wondering if she should say something more. It wasn't every day that someone like him walked into her life. Finally, summoning her courage, she approached his table with a smile. "If you don't mind me asking, what brings you to our little cafe?" Elon looked up, his eyes meeting hers with a glimmer of amusement. "Sometimes, you just need a quiet place to think," he replied. "Places like this remind me of where I started, a time when life was simpler." His words struck a chord with Jada. She realized that even someone as influential as Elon Musk might seek solace in the simplicity of ordinary life. Their brief conversation turned into an exchange of thoughts about life, ambition, and the value of small moments that often go unnoticed. By the time he left, Jada felt as though she had just experienced something extraordinary. The quiet of the evening shift had been broken, but in its place, a memory was created, one that she would cherish forever, some pressing matter, though his demeanor remained calm and approachable. Jada couldn't help but wonder what could be running through the mind of someone like him. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to break the silence. "Long day?" she asked gently, her voice tinged with curiosity. Elon looked up, a small smile forming on his face. "You could say that," he replied, his tone reflective. "Sometimes it's nice to step away from the chaos and just breathe. Places like this help you do that?" Jada nodded, surprised by his openness. "I imagine it must be hard to find moments of peace with everything you have going on." Elon chuckled softly, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. "It can be. But sometimes, it's the quiet moments that remind you why you're doing it all in the first place." Their brief exchange was interrupted by the murmurs of a few regulars seated nearby. Jada noticed their irritated glances, and it suddenly clicked. Perhaps they were uncomfortable with Elon's presence, or maybe they were skeptical of someone so famous in their quiet haven. Still, Jada chose to focus on her customer, determined to treat him with the same respect she gave everyone. "You've got the best apple pie in town," Elon said, taking a bite. His casual compliment brought a sense of pride to Jada, and she couldn't help but smile. "Glad you think so," she said warmly. "It's made fresh every morning, our little claim to fame." Elon nodded, savoring another bite before setting his fork down. "Sometimes, it's the small things that make the biggest difference," he said, more to himself than anyone else. As the evening continued, Jada found herself glancing toward Elon's table. He seemed more relaxed now, his earlier tension replaced by a quiet contentment. When he finished his coffee and pie, he stood, leaving a generous tip on the table. "Thanks for the coffee and the pie," he said, his smile genuine. "And for the reminder that even in the smallest corners of the world, there's always something special to find." Jada watched as he left, the bell above the door chiming softly in his wake. The cafe returned to its usual quiet, but the moment lingered in her mind. Elon Musk had walked into her world for just a brief time, but his words left an impression. It wasn't just about the coffee or the pie. It was about the shared understanding of life's small yet meaningful moments. Hypocritical. Frank's tone was sharp, his words echoing through the quiet cafe. The other patrons turned their heads, tension thick in the air. Elon set his fork down and looked at Frank with measured calmness. "I understand your concern," he began, his voice steady but firm. "When I helped start OpenAI, the goal was to create AI that benefited humanity, something transparent and safe. But over time, I felt the direction shifted in ways I didn't agree with. So yes, I'm working on something new. It's not about competition, it's about staying true to those original principles." Frank squinted, as if sizing up Elon's response. "Sounds like a lot of corporate doublespeak to me," he muttered. "But I guess you've got your reasons." Jada, sensing the tension, stepped in. "Frank, how about I get you a refill on that coffee?" she suggested, her voice light but firm. Frank grumbled under his breath and returned to his seat, leaving the conversation unfinished. Elon gave Jada a small nod of thanks before returning to his thoughts. Jada couldn't help but admire how he handled the situation, with grace and clarity, even under scrutiny. It made her realize that no matter how big someone's achievements, they're still just human, navigating challenges like anyone else. Differently. Elon leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped on the table, and looked Frank directly in the eye. "It's not about money or power," he said, his voice firm but measured. "It's about ensuring that AI serves humanity, not just the interests of a select few. Transparency matters. Trust matters. And that's what I'm trying to achieve." The room fell silent, the murmurs dying down. Even Frank seemed momentarily taken aback by the sincerity in Elon's voice. Jada watched the scene unfold, feeling a strange mix of tension and admiration. She could see the weight of Elon's words and the conviction behind them, but she also saw how hard it was for people like Frank to believe in lofty ideals when cynicism had taken root. Breaking the silence, Jada stepped forward. "You know, Frank," she said gently, "sometimes it's easy to assume the worst about people, especially those in positions of power. But maybe it's worth hearing them out too. Actions speak louder than words, right?" Frank grunted, his expression softening slightly. "Maybe," he muttered, retreating to his seat. Elon gave Jada a small, appreciative smile. It was clear to her that even someone as influential as him valued a moment of humanity. A quiet ally in a room filled with doubt judged someone without understanding their intentions, Jada said, her eyes meeting Frank's. "Change is never simple, and sometimes, the people pushing for it face the most resistance. Maybe it's worth giving him the benefit of the doubt instead of assuming the worst." Frank raised an eyebrow, surprised by her boldness, but he didn't interrupt. The rest of the cafe had gone quiet, all eyes now on Jada as she stood in the middle of the room, her heart pounding. Turning toward Elon, she added, "I don't know everything about what you're trying to achieve, but I do know this: you've sparked conversations, challenged norms, and tried to bring transparency to an industry that desperately needs it. That counts for something." Elon gave a small nod, his expression softening. "Thank you," he said, his voice carrying genuine gratitude. "It's not always easy to explain these things, but I appreciate you standing up for me." Frank leaned back in his chair, scratching his chin thoughtfully. After a pause, he muttered, "Well, maybe you've got a point. Time will tell, I guess." The tension in the room eased slightly, and the murmurs quieted down. Jada returned to the counter, her face flushed but her heart lighter. Elon finished his coffee, leaving a generous tip before standing to leave. As he passed by the counter, he paused and looked at Jada. "Sometimes, it's the quiet voices that make the biggest impact," he said with a faint smile. "Thank you for yours." Jada watched as he walked out into the night, feeling a sense of pride she hadn't expected. That evening, she realized that courage didn't always mean grand gestures. It could be as simple as speaking up when it mattered most. Progress is about taking what's there and making it better. Jada's voice grew steadier, her passion shining through. Criticizing is easy, but trying to fix things, to make them right, that takes guts. The room fell silent. Frank shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly caught off guard by her words. The other regulars exchanged glances, their earlier hostility waning. Elon gave a small nod, his lips curling into a faint smile. "Well said," he replied, his tone warm and genuine. It's people like you, those willing to speak up, that keep the world moving forward. Jada felt a rush of pride but quickly looked down, trying to hide her blush. Frank finally muttered, "All right, maybe you're onto something. Guess we'll see how it all pans out." The atmosphere in the cafe lightened, and conversations resumed. As Elon stood to leave, he placed a generous tip on the table and approached Jada at the counter. "Thank you," he said softly, "for seeing beyond the noise. People like you give me hope." Jada watched as he exited into the night, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. That quiet evening shift turned into a moment she would never forget, a reminder that even small voices can make a big difference to someone else. "To cover your shifts for a while," Mr. Smith said firmly, his tone leaving no room for debate. Jada felt a lump in her throat, her heart sinking. Are you firing me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, just giving you some time to think things over," he replied, though his stern expression suggested otherwise. The room was painfully quiet now. The regulars avoided her gaze, some looking guilty, others indifferent. Jada blinked back tears, nodding slowly. She untied her apron, placed it on the counter, and walked toward the door, her steps heavy. Before she could leave, Elon stood up. "Wait," he called, his voice cutting through the silence. Jada turned, surprised. Elon approached Mr. Smith, his expression calm but assertive. "You're punishing her for standing up for someone?" he asked. "That's not the kind of leadership that builds trust or loyalty." Mr. Smith hesitated, looking uncomfortable under Elon's steady gaze. "It's not about punishment," he stammered. "It's about maintaining a welcoming atmosphere for everyone." "Seems to me she was doing just that," Elon said firmly. "Sometimes doing the right thing isn't popular, but it's always necessary. Maybe you should consider that." Jada watched in awe as the man she had defended moments ago now stood up for her. The regulars murmured among themselves, and Mr. Smith finally sighed, looking at Jada. "All right," he said reluctantly. "Maybe I was too hasty. Jada, you can finish your shift?" Jada nodded, her voice shaking as she said, "Thank you." Elon gave her a small smile before returning to his table. Jada felt a wave of gratitude and strength wash over her. That night, she realized that courage doesn't just inspire, it can change everything. Calm but resolute. "I didn't mean to stir up trouble for you. You showed more courage than most, and that says a lot about your character." Jada managed a faint smile, though her heart still felt heavy. "I just spoke the truth. That's all." Elon paused for a moment, then turned to Mr. Smith. If standing up for someone costs her job, maybe it's not her priorities that need reconsidering. The regulars fell silent, their earlier amusement fading. Mr. Smith shifted uncomfortably, his authority challenged in a way he wasn't used to. "It's not personal," he muttered. "I have to think about the business." Elon tilted his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Fair enough. Then let me offer a solution. I'll cover Jada's salary for the next year, double what she's earning now. That should give you time to find her replacement." The room froze. Jada's eyes widened in shock, while the regulars exchanged stunned glances. Mr. Smith stammered, "I don't think that's necessary." "It's not up for negotiation," Elon interrupted, his voice firm. "But if you'd rather not have her here, I'm sure I can find her a better opportunity elsewhere." Jada's breath caught. She felt overwhelmed, torn between gratitude and disbelief. "You don't have to do that," she murmured. Elon met her gaze. "Sometimes the world needs reminders that standing up for what's right is worth it." Mr. Smith, cornered, reluctantly nodded. "She can stay." Jada exhaled, relief washing over her. "Thank you," she said, looking at Elon with genuine admiration. As he returned to his seat, the atmosphere in the cafe shifted. The regulars avoided her gaze, and the whispers ceased. Jada felt stronger, knowing she had someone in her corner, someone who valued integrity as much as she did. That night, as Jada cleaned up after closing, she realized her world had changed, not because of Elon Musk's fame, but because of the lesson she had learned. Courage and truth always leave a mark, even in the most unexpected places. As Jada walked into the cafe, the familiar aroma of coffee and the hum of conversations greeted her, but today everything felt different. She stepped behind the counter, feeling the eyes of the regulars follow her every move. The usual warm greetings were replaced with cold stares and hushed whispers. The weight of their judgment felt like a heavy blanket, suffocating her. Jada forced herself to smile and went through the motions of preparing coffee, but her mind kept drifting back to the events of the previous day. She had been so sure that standing up for what was the right thing to do, but now she was paying the price. She couldn't help but feel like an outsider in her own workplace. As she set a cup of coffee down in front of Mr. Smith, the silence in the room felt even more oppressive. Her boss had barely acknowledged her since the incident, and Jada could tell that things weren't the same between them. She could feel the tension hanging in the air, but she kept her head down, refusing to let her emotions show. Just when Jada thought the day couldn't get any worse, the door opened, and she looked up in surprise. There, standing in the doorway, was Elon Musk. He stepped inside with the same quiet confidence he'd had the day before, but today his expression was different, more serious, even determined. Jada's heart skipped a beat as she stared at him, unsure of what to expect. Elon walked up to the counter, his eyes locking onto hers. "Jada," he said softly, his voice carrying more weight than before. "I meant what I said yesterday. You're a woman of integrity, and I'm not going to let this go unnoticed." Jada blinked, her breath catching in her throat. I don't know what you mean," she stammered. Elon nodded, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a letter and placing it on the counter in front of her. "This is for you," he said. "I've made arrangements. You don't have to worry about your job anymore." Jada's eyes scanned the letter, disbelief washing over her as she read. Elon Musk had personally intervened to ensure she would be taken care of, offering her a position at one of his companies, with a salary far beyond what she ever imagined. It wasn't just a job offer, it was a lifeline, a sign of faith in her when she felt the world was turning its back on her. Her hands trembled as she lifted her gaze to him. "But why? After everything that happened, I didn't expect this." Elon gave her a small, almost reassuring smile. "Because standing up for what's right should never cost someone their future. You deserve a chance to thrive." Jada felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she blinked them away, not wanting to show any weakness. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to," Elon replied. "Just keep being who you are. That's enough." As Elon turned to leave the cafe once more, this time the atmosphere was different. The regulars were silent, some of them even looking guilty. Jada's world felt a little bit lighter, and as she looked at the letter in her hands, she realized that sometimes, doing the right thing can lead to unexpected rewards that could change your life forever. An eternity, Elon looked up and caught Jada's eye. There was something in his gaze that made her heart skip a beat, an unspoken understanding. She could feel the weight of the previous day's tension still lingering in the air, but there was something different about the way he looked at her now. It wasn't just gratitude, it was respect. Jada had been avoiding looking at him directly, unsure of how to feel after everything that had happened. She'd never expected someone like Elon Musk to take an interest in her, much less stand up for her when it had seemed like everyone else was against her. But today, his presence felt more intentional, like he was trying to make a point. He set his cup down and waved her over. Jada hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron before walking over to his table. "Hey, Jada," Elon said casually, his tone calm but carrying a hint of something more. "Can we talk for a minute?" Her pulse quickened, but she nodded. "Sure, what's up?" He motioned to the empty seat across from him. "Please sit. I owe you an apology." Jada's brow furrowed in surprise. "An apology? For what?" "For everything that happened yesterday," he said, his voice more serious now. "I didn't mean to put you in that position. I saw how much it cost you, and I want you to know that wasn't my intention." Jada felt a lump form in her throat, but she tried to keep her composure. "You didn't do anything wrong. I didn't expect things to escalate like they did. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You were," Elon replied firmly. "But I also know it wasn't fair to put you in a situation where your job and your reputation were at stake. I should have handled it differently." She shook her head slightly. "No, I'm the one who jumped in without thinking. I shouldn't have gotten involved like that. I was just trying to stand up for what I believe in. Elon looked at her thoughtfully, his eyes softening. I admire that. Not everyone would have done what you did. In fact, it's why I'm here today. I want to offer you something. Jada's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what he was talking about, but the way he said it with such confidence and sincerity made her listen intently. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I want to offer you a job, Elon said simply. I know it's not much compared to what you've already been through, but I'd like you to join my team. I believe people like you, people who aren't afraid to stand up for what's right, are the ones who will make the world better. Jada's eyes widened in disbelief. Wait, you're serious? Elon nodded. Absolutely. I think you'd be an asset, and I want to make sure you're rewarded for your integrity. No one should have to lose their job for doing the right thing. For a moment, Jada just stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. A job offer from Elon Musk? It felt surreal, like a dream she could never have imagined. But here he was, making it a reality. Are you sure? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. I mean, I'm just a waitress. I've never worked in a corporate environment. I know, Elon said with a slight smile. But that's the thing. People like you bring a unique perspective. And that's exactly what we need. Jada's mind was racing. She had spent years working at Poppy's Cafe, and while she had always loved the job, she had also dreamed of something bigger. But this was beyond anything she could have imagined. The possibility of working with someone like Elon Musk, someone who had built companies that were changing the world, was both terrifying and exciting. I don't even know what to say, she whispered, still in disbelief. This is incredible. You don't have to say anything right now, Elon said, standing up. Think about it. If you decide it's not for you, I'll understand. But I want you to know that you've got a future beyond this cafe if that's what you want. Jada's eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them away quickly. Thank you, Elon. I never expected this. With a nod, Elon turned to leave, pausing for a moment before walking toward the door. He looked back at her, his expression softening. Take care of yourself, Jada, he said with a final smile before stepping out into the street. As the door closed behind him, the room seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The regulars who had been watching in tense silence now exchanged looks, some of them surprised, others nodding in approval. Jada stood there, still trying to process the whirlwind of events that had just transpired. Her world had shifted in a way she never expected, and in that moment, she realized that standing up for what was right hadn't just changed her day, it had changed her life. Hearing, Elon smiled slightly, clearly sensing her disbelief. I mean, he said, his tone calm but earnest, we'd like to offer you a position. A job with us, working on something bigger. I think you have the kind of qualities we need. People who act with integrity and stand up for what they believe in. Those are the kinds of people I want on my team. Jada's heart skipped a beat, and she nearly dropped the card machine. Her mind raced, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Wait, you want to offer me a job? She repeated, her voice a mix of disbelief and awe. But I'm just a waitress. Elon chuckled softly, clearly amused by her reaction. I know, but that's exactly why I think you'd be a perfect fit. You see things differently. You didn't just follow the crowd, you stood up for someone even when it wasn't easy. And that's something I value. In a world full of people who shy away from standing up for what's right, you were brave enough to do it. Jada's head was spinning. She had worked as a waitress at Poppy's Cafe for years, and while she loved the job, she had always wondered if there was something more out there for her. But this offer from Elon Musk himself was something she could never have imagined. But why me? Jada asked, her voice trembling. I'm just doing my job. I didn't think what I did was that big of a deal. Elon shook his head slightly. You don't see it, do you? He said, a hint of admiration in his eyes. It's a big deal because you didn't stay silent. You took a stand in front of people who were ready to judge me, and you did it without asking for anything in return. That's rare. And I want people like that to be a part of what we're building. Jada stood there, processing his words. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, excitement, confusion, and something else, something deep inside her that felt like a mixture of fear and hope. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but was she ready for it? I don't even know what to say, Jada said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is unbelievable. Elon smiled warmly. You don't have to say anything now. I want you to think about it. Take some time, and if it feels right, we can talk more. But just know you've earned this. And whatever you decide, I respect you for it. Jada took a deep breath, trying to collect her thoughts. The idea of leaving everything she knew, her regulars, the routine, the simple life she had built at the cafe, felt both daunting and exhilarating. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the pull of something greater, the chance to be a part of something that could change the world. With a shaky nod, she replied, I'll think about it. Thank you, Elon. I really appreciate this. Elon nodded back, standing up from the table. No pressure, he said with a smile. Take your time. I'll be around. As he walked toward the door, Jada stood there for a moment, processing the gravity of what had just happened. She had never imagined that a simple act of standing up for someone could lead to this moment, to a chance at something bigger than she ever thought possible. The cafe was still, the regulars now whispering among themselves, their expressions mixed with surprise, curiosity, and even a bit of envy. Jada felt the weight of their stares but also the rush of possibility that Elon had just offered her. Her life had changed in an instant, and as she stood there watching him leave, she realized that sometimes, standing up for what's right could open doors you never knew existed. Transaction. This was the moment her life could change, a crossroads she had never expected. As Elon took his receipt and stood up to leave, she felt a mix of disbelief and excitement bubbling inside her. Elon looked at her with a knowing smile, his eyes still soft with encouragement. I'm glad you're on board, Jada. I think you'll fit right in with our team. It's a big step, but it's one that could lead to something meaningful. Jada nodded, still trying to wrap her head around the surreal turn of events. She had been a waitress at Poppy's Cafe for years, serving coffee and pie to regulars who shared their daily stories and routines. Now, here she was, about to join one of the most influential figures in tech. It was overwhelming, but there was something stirring inside her, a sense of purpose and possibility. As Elon walked out the door, the bell above the entrance chiming once more, the room seemed to come alive again. The regulars had started talking amongst themselves, their murmurs now a mix of curiosity, disbelief, and even respect. Some of them had been skeptical of Elon Musk's presence the night before, but now it was clear that Jada had earned their admiration, whether they liked it or not. Jada took a moment to herself, breathing deeply as she glanced around the cafe. It wasn't just about the job offer. It was about the chance to step out of her comfort zone, to make a difference in a way she never expected. She was terrified, but she was also excited, ready for whatever the next chapter would bring. Mr. Smith, who had been watching the exchange with a quiet intensity, walked over to her. You okay? He asked, his tone softer than usual. Jada smiled at him, her heart still racing but filled with a new sense of hope. Yeah, I'm more than okay. She paused, taking a deep breath. I just got offered a job with Elon Musk. His eyes widened slightly, and for the first time, Jada saw something like admiration in his gaze. Well, I'll be damned, he said with a grin. You're really something, Jada. I never expected this, but you deserve it. Go get him, kid. The warmth in his voice made her feel even more certain. She had made the right decision, even if it was scary. And just like that, the life she had known, the quiet, predictable days at Poppy's Cafe, started to feel like a chapter that was coming to an end. The next one, with all its uncertainties and possibilities, was just beginning. And Jada was ready for whatever it had in store. Jada's decision to stand up for Elon Musk in the cafe was motivated by a mix of admiration for his vision and a strong sense of fairness. Although she had always looked up to Elon for his achievements and ideas, it was more than just admiration that drove her actions. Jada believed that no one, regardless of their status, should be judged based on one side of a story. She saw his efforts to build something safer and more transparent, especially in the realm of AI, and she felt it was worth defending, even if it came at the cost of her own job. It wasn't simply about agreeing with everything Elon stood for, but about standing up for what she felt was right, even in the face of adversity. Jada's actions revealed her character, someone who values truth and integrity over popular opinion. Her decision was a testament to her courage, and though it cost her in the short term, it opened up a new path that could change her life forever. What do you think? Do you believe Jada's actions were motivated by more than just admiration for Elon Musk? Was it her strong sense of justice and fairness that led her to defend him? We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.